The starlit dancer was not a grand ship. It was old, patched in many places, and carried the scars of a dozen rough journeys across the stars. But for Captain Vera, it was home. The reptilian commander had flown it for nearly 20 years, and she knew every bolt and every dent. The ship's crew was small but diverse, 14 beings from 9 different worlds. They had warriors, engineers, traders, and pilots. What they did not have was a proper cook. Meals aboard the starlit dancer were usually nothing more than reheated nutrient paste. It kept the body alive, but it offered no comfort. For months the crew had eaten in silence, their spirits as dull as their food. Captain Vera had posted a job notice across several stations, but no one truly wanted to join a freighter that paid poorly and flew dangerous routes. Then came Elias Ward. He arrived at the station dock carrying only one bag. He was human, tall, lean, with quiet eyes that seemed to watch everything but reveal little. When the captain first met him, she studied him carefully. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy. They were often loud, emotional, and unpredictable. They talked too much, bargained too hard, and sometimes fought too quickly. This one, however, looked still. "You are here for the cook position?" Captain Vera asked, her scaled face hard to read. Elias nodded once. "You have no references," she said, flicking her clawed fingers over the datapad. "No crew records. No trade certificates. Why should I accept you?" For a moment, Elias said nothing. The silence stretched long enough for the captain to shift uncomfortably. Then at last he spoke in a calm voice. "I don't talk much, sir, but I can cook." It was such a simple answer. No long speech, no dramatic promise, no argument. Just that. The captain tilted her head. She had expected a human to beg or to brag. Instead, this one stood steady as if nothing could move him. Vera let out a low hiss of thought. The ship needed someone. The crew was growing restless. And what harm could come from letting this quiet human try? She shrugged, folding her arms. "Works for me." And just like that, Elias Ward became the cook of the starlit dancer. The crew did not welcome him warmly. At first they whispered among themselves. "Another human," muttered Koresh, the insectoid engineer. "Too loud, too messy." "This one looks broken," said Dola, the feathered pilot. "Doesn't even smile." But Elias ignored the whispers. He simply carried his bag to the galley and began to explore. The kitchen was in poor condition. Burnt pans, broken utensils, and shelves filled with expired ration packs. Most would have turned away, but Elias touched every item with care, as if mapping the possibilities in his mind. That evening, instead of serving the usual gray nutrient paste, Elias presented the crew with something different. It was simple. Roasted tubers from the last cargo run, seasoned with spices he carried in small jars from his bag. There was also a stew made from the leftover protein blocks. But somehow he had turned the bland squares into something warm and rich. The crew stared at their plates in silence. "Is this safe?" Koresh clicked nervously. Elias did not answer. He only nodded once and waited. Captain Vera tried the stew first. Her tongue flicked in surprise. It was good. It was more than good. It was food that reminded her of long ago days when she was a young cadet, eating fresh meals in the training halls. Warmth spread through her chest. Soon the others began to eat. At first they were cautious. Then spoon by spoon their caution vanished. The galley, which had been silent for months, began to fill with small sounds of surprise, then laughter, then conversation. Elias said nothing. He simply served each of them and then sat at the corner of the table with his own bowl. He did not try to join their talk. He did not try to impress. He only ate quietly, his eyes soft as he listened to the chatter he had unknowingly created. When the meal was finished, Captain Vera leaned back in her chair. She studied the human again, this time with new eyes. He had said only one sentence since they met, yet in that silence he had done something no one else had managed. He had brought her crew together. Perhaps she thought this human was not broken at all. Perhaps he was exactly what they needed. That night, for the first time in many journeys, the starlit dancer was alive with voices. And it was all because of the quiet cook who said so little, but gave so much. The next morning, the crew of the starlit dancer gathered in the mess hall with mixed feelings. Some thought the meal from last night had been a lucky accident. Others hoped it was not. They had grown used to disappointment, and it was easier not to expect much. Elias was already in the galley when they arrived. He moved with quiet focus, cleaning pans, sorting supplies, and checking the food stores. He worked with steady hands, not wasting a single motion. The crew watched him, waiting for him to speak, but he did not. He simply nodded once in greeting and returned to his work. When the food was finally served, the crew blinked in surprise. Instead of nutrient paste, Elias placed plates of warm bread, baked from the most basic flour rations, and bowls of soup made from dried vegetables. A few scraps of herbs floated on top, filling the air with a fresh scent. Koresh, the insectoid engineer, clicked his mandibles. Bread? From that flour? Impossible. It was useless. But when he tore off a piece and tasted it, his antennae twitched in delight. Crisp. Warm. It has flavor. The pilot Dola, with her feathered wings folded close, dipped her beak into the soup. It tastes like home, she whispered. Soon the mess hall filled with small sounds of contentment. Beings from 9 different worlds who had shared only silence during meals, now shared smiles and curious glances. For the first time in many months, breakfast became more than just survival. It became an event. Over the next days, Elias continued to surprise them. Every meal was different. Sometimes he roasted simple roots with spice. Other times he created stews, porridges, or fried patties made from old rations that had seemed useless. He even managed to make a dessert from dried fruits and starch powder. It was not just the food. It was the way the food changed the crew. Conversations began to rise during meals. The crew, who had once sat in silence, started talking about their homes, their travels, and their dreams. Arguments that had lingered quietly between species began to fade as they laughed together at the table. Captain Vera noticed the change most of all. Her crew, once restless and divided, now worked smoother shifts. Repairs were done faster. Pilots were sharper. Even Koresh, who often complained about everything, seemed more patient. She realized it was not just fuel and maintenance that kept a ship alive, it was spirit. And Elias, without saying much, was giving that spirit back to them. But Elias himself remained quiet. He spoke only when necessary. Need more salt? This pan is broken. Dinner at 19 hours. That was all. No stories, no long words. He simply let the food speak for him. One evening, while the ship drifted through a silent trade lane, Captain Vera decided to join him in the galley. She leaned against the wall, watching him prepare something that smelled sharp and sweet. "You are different from other humans," she said. Elias paused but did not look at her. He stirred the pot slowly. "Most humans talk too much," she continued. "They argue, they fight, they always want to be seen. You are quiet." Why, for a long time, Elias said nothing. Vera thought he would ignore her question. Then softly he answered, "I don't like wasting words." She tilted her head. "And food is not waste?" He shrugged. "Food brings people together. Talking often pushes them apart." The captain hissed in amusement. Strange logic, but perhaps it works. She left him to his work, but her respect for him grew. Not all crew members trusted him yet. A few still doubted his silence. One evening, a large tusked warrior named Brogan tested him. "You think you're special, human?" Brogan rumbled as Elias served the meal. "You cook and suddenly you matter? What happens when the food runs out?" Elias placed the plate in front of him calmly. "Then I will make more." The warrior frowned, but after tasting the dish, he had nothing more to say. The food had answered better than Elias ever could. Days turned into weeks, and the starlit dancer felt more alive than it had in years. Meals became the heartbeat of the ship. Crew members planned their shifts around them, eager to see what Elias would create next. One night, after a long journey through an asteroid belt, the crew gathered exhausted in the mess hall. They expected the usual stew, but Elias served something new: flat cakes filled with spiced vegetables and small pieces of protein. The smell alone lifted their tired faces. As they ate, Dola leaned back and spread her wings. "I never thought food could make me feel stronger than sleep." Koresh clicked his mandibles in agreement. "He is not just a cook, he is—" What is the human word? Comfort. Captain Vera, sitting at the head of the table, watched Elias silently cleaning the pans in the background. He was not even sitting with them, but his presence filled the room. She thought of the day he had joined. "I don't talk much, sir, but I can cook." At the time, it had seemed like nothing. Now it felt like the most important promise anyone had made to her crew in years. The captain realized something else. The quiet human had not only given them food, he had given them back their hope. The starlit dancer had grown used to quiet travel. After weeks of smooth flight, the crew almost believed their journey would be uneventful. But space rarely allowed such peace for long. It happened in the far stretch of the Harlan Belt, a region known for pirates. At first, the crew picked up faint signals on the radar. Then, without warning, a pack of raiders appeared, firing at the freighter's hull. The ship shook violently. Sirens blared. The crew scrambled to their stations, shouting orders in half a dozen languages. "Shields down to 40%, cried Dola from the cockpit. "Engines strained," Koresh clicked, claws dancing over the controls. Captain Vera roared commands, steady and strong, as the ship tried to dodge the incoming fire. Elias stood silently in the corner of the galley, waiting for his moment. He had no weapon, no battle training. Fighting was not his skill. But when a blast struck the storage bay, he knew his time had come. The pirates did not manage to board, but the attack left the freighter damaged. When the danger passed and the raiders fled, the crew checked their supplies. The news was grim. Half the food stores were gone, burned or sucked out into space through a ruptured wall. What remained was spoiled or nearly useless. Only a few containers of dry rations and odd alien ingredients were left. The crew gathered in the mess hall, their faces heavy with worry. "We will starve before reaching the next station," Koresh muttered. 2 weeks at best," Dola added softly. Brogan slammed a fist on the table. "We cannot fight pirates on empty stomachs. We are already weak." All eyes turned to Captain Vera. She stared at the ruined supply report and then glanced at Elias. The human did not flinch. He simply said, "I will manage." That evening, Elias entered the galley. The shelves looked almost empty. Strange alien plants that most of the crew never touched. Dry powders with sharp smells. A crate of roots, half spoiled. For another cook, it would have been hopeless. But Elias worked with quiet determination. He cut away the spoiled parts, boiled the roots into broth, and added the powders in careful measure. He ground the alien plants into paste, mixing them with flour to stretch the supply. His hands moved with steady rhythm, as if he had been waiting for this test. When dinner was served, the crew hesitated. The bowls held a dark, thick stew with an unusual scent. It looked strange, even a little frightening. "Is it safe?" Koresh asked. Elias nodded once. Captain Vera tasted first. The flavor was sharp, earthy, but warm. Not what she expected, but not bad either. She looked around the table. "Eat." The crew followed. Soon, cautious bites became eager spoons. The stew filled their stomachs, giving strength where there had been only fear. It was not a feast, but it was survival. For the first time since the pirate attack, the crew smiled. Days passed. Supplies grew thinner, but Elias never stopped. Each day he created something new from what little they had. He roasted plant fibers until they tasted like crisp bread. He fermented alien seeds into a drink that eased fatigue. He mixed powders with broth until the flavor reminded each crew member of home in some small way. The crew began to believe in him. "Every day he saves us," Dola whispered one night. "He is not a cook," Koresh replied. "He is what humans call miracle." Even Brogan, the warrior who once doubted him, ate quietly without complaint. His tusked face softened with respect each time Elias set a plate before him. But Elias did more than feed them. He changed their spirit. Before, fear had filled the ship. Now, meals became the anchor that held them together. Even when repairs failed and engines sputtered, the crew said, "Let us eat this, then we will fight again." And each time Elias gave them the strength to rise. Captain Vera watched carefully. She realized that the human was not only keeping them alive, he was keeping them united. Without him, the crew would have broken under the pressure of hunger and fear. One night after another long day of patching the engines, she found Elias cleaning his pans. "You carry us," she said softly. "Not with weapons, not with speeches, with food." Elias looked at her calmly. "Food is enough." Vera let out a low hiss of thought. Perhaps she realized he was right. On the 12th day after the pirate attack, the starlit dancer limped out of the Harlan Belt. The crew was tired, bruised, and their ship was badly scarred, but they were alive, and every one of them knew why. It was because of the quiet human in the galley, who spoke few words but never let them starve. The starlit dancer had survived the pirates, but danger was not finished with them. A dense asteroid field lay ahead, stretching for hundreds of kilometers. The sensors warned of rogue fragments moving unpredictably. One wrong move and the ship could be torn apart. Captain Vera called the crew to stations. Pilots, engineers, and weapons specialists focused on navigation and shields. Tension filled the corridors. The ship's usual rhythm had vanished, replaced by frantic energy. Meanwhile, in the galley, Elias moved quietly. He did not have weapons. He did not have tools for space combat, but he knew he could help in a way no one else could. He prepared a meal. The smell drifted through the ship, soft and warm, even above the alarms and engine thrums. It was simple: steamed roots, seasoned protein blocks, and small fried cakes made from leftover starches. But it carried something deeper. Crew members wandered past the galley, drawn by the scent. They paused, eyes widening. Even Brogan, usually focused solely on defense, sniffed and muttered, "It smells like home." Elias plated the food carefully. "Eat now," he said softly. "Then we will handle the field." The first few crew members hesitated. Shields were low. The hull was cracking. Every instinct told them to focus only on the danger. Yet hunger gnawed at their concentration. Slowly, they sat at the mess table, sharing the meal. At first, bites were hesitant. Then, as the warmth of food filled their stomachs, energy returned. Laughter and small talk, timid at first, began to weave through the mess hall. Fear did not vanish, but it became manageable. Captain Vera glanced at Elias. She realized something important. Morale mattered as much as shields. A tired, frightened crew was more dangerous than an asteroid collision. Hours passed. The starlit dancer navigated the field with expert care. The engines strained. The hull groaned. Yet the crew worked as one. Elias never left the galley, but his presence was felt everywhere. Each time a crew member passed, he offered a small nod, a plate, or a word of encouragement. He did not lecture. He did not demand. He only gave what they needed most: strength, focus, and hope. Koresh, once always complaining, tapped the controls with renewed precision. Dola's wings flicked in rhythm with the ship, guiding it between massive rocks. Brogan, muscles tense and tusks clenched, held the injured sections together. Every action seemed connected to the simple act of sharing a meal. By the end of the day, the starlit dancer had cleared the asteroid field. Not a single major system was lost. No one was hurt. And yet the crew knew that the success was not only their skill, it was Elias. That night, the crew gathered in the mess hall as usual. The food Elias served was modest: soups, roasted roots, and a sweet treat made from dried fruit. But the room was filled with something more than smell and taste. It was filled with gratitude and respect. Brogan leaned back, tusks reflecting the dim lights. "I underestimated him," he admitted softly. "He doesn't fight like a warrior. He doesn't command like a captain. But he keeps us alive in ways we cannot see." Dola nodded. "He is the quiet strength of this ship." Koresh clicked in agreement. "His words are few, but his actions speak louder than any orders." Even Captain Vera felt it. Elias had never demanded recognition. He had never argued or bragged. He simply fed them, supported them, and gave them courage, and the crew had rallied, stronger than ever. Over the next few days, the ship's journey continued. Minor problems arose: engine strain, damaged shields, and small hull leaks. Each time, the crew worked through them, fueled by strength gained from Elias's food. Meals became a ritual, a moment to regain focus, a reminder that survival was not only about fighting, it was about caring for one another. Elias, as always, remained quiet. He moved through the galley like a shadow, chopping, stirring, and serving. He never asked for thanks, he never boasted. He only offered what he could. And it was enough. Captain Vera reflected on the human who said so little but achieved so much. Perhaps humans are stronger than I believed, she mused. Not because of weapons, not because of cunning, but because of their quiet ways, their care for others, and their determination. Elias continued to cook, unaware of the captain's thoughts, and the crew continued to eat, silently acknowledging what they all knew deep inside. This quiet human had saved them more than once, and in doing so, he had taught them something they could not learn from any manual or weapon. The greatest strength sometimes lies not in fighting, but in sustaining, protecting, and bringing hope. As the starlit dancer moved further into uncharted space, the crew knew one thing for certain. As long as Elias Ward was on board, they could face any danger together. The starlit dancer had finally reached calmer space. The ship was battered, scratched, and tired, but it had survived. The crew, once scattered and weary, had grown closer than ever. And at the heart of their survival was one quiet human, Elias Ward. The moment the ship docked at the space station, the crew paused to take a deep breath. They had earned this rest, but their thoughts drifted to Elias. He had not sought glory, medals, or praise. He had only done his work quietly and steadily. And yet, without him, they might not have survived the pirates, the asteroid field, or the days of near starvation that followed. Captain Vera watched him in the galley, preparing the evening meal as if nothing had changed. She approached quietly, careful not to disturb his focus. "You've done more than I ever expected," she said softly. Elias glanced at her briefly. "I just cook," he replied. His voice was calm, almost humble. She studied him for a long moment. "You have kept this crew alive. You have kept them together. That is more than cooking." Elias nodded once, then returned to chopping vegetables. His eyes, steady and observant, seemed to say that words were not necessary. The crew understood anyway. Over the next few days, the station's traders, engineers, and dock workers began to notice the crew of the starlit dancer. They were healthier, stronger, and more united than most freighter crews arriving from the outer sectors. Rumors spread of the quiet human who had kept a diverse and difficult crew alive on nothing but ingenuity and determination. Brogan, the tusked warrior, leaned against the wall of the galley one evening. "He doesn't even speak much," he muttered. "But he does what matters. He saves lives without fighting. That is human strength." Dola smiled, feathers glowing in the dim light. "And he does it without asking for thanks. He only feeds us. That is why we survived." Even Koresh, the insectoid engineer, chirped thoughtfully. "I do not understand humans fully. But I know this, he is not like others. Quiet, calm, patient, strong in ways we rarely see." Captain Vera addressed her crew in the mess hall that night. They were gathered as usual, plates in front of them, but the mood was celebratory. "We have survived much," she said, "and each of you played your part. But there is one among us whose work has no equal. Quiet, patient, humble, he has nourished our bodies and our spirits. Without him, we might not have made it here." All eyes turned to Elias. The human looked down at his hands for a moment, then gave a small, unassuming nod. No one spoke at first. The room was silent, not because of fear, but because words could not fully capture their respect. Finally, Brogan stepped forward. "We owe him more than we can say. Not weapons, not speed, not shields, food, and the care that comes with it." The crew raised their voices in agreement, a chorus of chirps, clicks, whistles, and human speech. For once, words were enough. They were saying what they felt. Elias simply smiled faintly, then returned to serving the meal. That was enough for him. In the weeks that followed, the story of Elias Ward spread beyond the station. Traders told tales of the quiet human who had saved a crew not through fighting, not through cunning, but by cooking and caring. Other freighters requested him for long voyages. Some called him the silent chef of the stars. Elias never sought fame. He moved quietly, preparing meals, watching over the crew, and letting his work speak for him. And yet everywhere he went, humans were seen differently, not just as loud, impulsive, or reckless, but as capable of calm, quiet strength. Captain Vera often watched him with quiet admiration. She had learned something important from the human. Strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it comes in the form of nourishment, comfort, and steady presence, and sometimes it can unite an entire crew against the odds. One evening, as the sun of a nearby star filtered through the station's windows, Elias prepared dinner for his crew. They laughed, shared stories, and even teased one another gently. It was a simple scene, yet it carried a deeper meaning. The captain joined him silently. "You have done more than any warrior or officer could," she said. Elias looked up, his calm eyes meeting hers. "I only did what I could," he said softly. Vera smiled. And that was enough. It was more than enough. The starlit dancer would continue to sail the stars. Pirates, asteroids, and dangers awaited them always. But the crew had a secret weapon no one could fight. Their quiet human who cooked, cared, and inspired. He never sought recognition. He never demanded praise. He simply did his work, day after day, quietly proving that humanity's true strength was not only in weapons or courage, but in the simple, unassuming power of care, thoughtfulness, and persistence. And in the hearts of those who had shared meals with him, Elias Ward would never be forgotten, because sometimes, saving the galaxy did not require battles or speeches. Sometimes it required a quiet human who could cook,